Assalamu alaikum. Are you there? Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. How are you?
I'm wonderful. I don't know how to.
Yeah, just
This is what we did.
yeah. Tilt your camera, please. Tilt your camera. Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
This is
Yeah,
how you do it.
that'll have to do for
Okay.
now. Okay, alhamdulillah. Welcome, inshallah. Let me just let's have a few opening words while you clear up on your side. I'm just going to share this video onto my page, inshallah, and that way people can actually get access to what we are doing as well. So if you just share it to your timelines, please, and as our friends are coming up, then we can allow them to do the same also, inshallah. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you beautifully. Can you hear me?
Beautifully,
Yes.
mashallah. How is the beautiful Durban weather?
It's all the more beautiful because I am here in Durban.
Finally. Okay.
Yeah.
Mashallah. That's a lot good. Alhamdulillah. On a page that we manage is not the Aafiyah healing. It's going to be the bubble. Yeah, inshallah, let's just share it to a few more pages and then inshallah we can get into it. Share the page. Okay. So where inshallah people can come up and be able to share their thoughts with us as well on this important topic that we're talking about with regards to premarital counseling. We're facing an epidemic that people are getting married and then suddenly realizing that they've actually got together with the wrong person. And so this is a big problem in our ummah at the moment. So inshallah, today, welcome inshallah to our Aafiyah Healing Summit, guest number 5, Brother Edris Khamissa, an educationalist, human development consultant, and mashallah, many such lofty titles he has surrounding his blessed name. And someone that has traveled the world, alhamdulillah, and continues to do so, inspiring and motivating learners and educators alike. And alhamdulillah, today we have the opportunity to have him with us to speak to us about this concept, especially because he talks a lot, you know, having been a headmaster in a school for decades, alhamdulillah, in Durban, in around South Africa. And so what we want today, inshallah, is to learn a little bit from his expertise and wisdom of what it is that we need in order to assist us and help us in trying to get that balance in life, and especially when it comes to marriage, which is another phase of life altogether, that we want to touch on this very difficult topic, which deals with making that right decision and finding that right life partner that is going to be that'll be the other half of completing our deen, that will bring that coolness to our eyes and our hearts. So inshallah, welcome Brother Edris, and let's go inshallah. Tell me, what are we going to talk about today?
No, assalamu alaikum. I think as we were saying yesterday, it's a very critical topic. If there's anything that impacts on your life, either giving you unbridled joy or putting you into depression, is marriage. And yet, you know that if we marry for the right reasons and make informed choices, the home can be a sanctuary, a great place, because nothing is more beautiful than to have the support of your spouse. Therefore, you know, we are told that we are garments unto each other.
Brother Edris,
as I'm saying that.
Can we just vertical your phone, please? Sorry. Just vertical your phone, please.
Okay, vertical.
Sorry about that. Okay, let's go.
Okay. So I said that, you know what, this is an important thing, that if you go through life and people are going through any kind of depression, in most instances, it's about relationships, and none more so than marriage or the family. whatever it is. And so therefore, I think it's a critical, it's an imperative that we make informed choices as parents. We do the right thing, inshallah, to guide them, to guide them and to inspire them. And, because children today are saying, well, if marriage is what my mom and dad show me, then I don't want to marry.
Yeah. It's a big problem these days, where they look at the halat of the society and they run away from this.
No, that's very, very true. And so I think, therefore we were inspired to write the book, Premarital Conversations and Beyond. And as we said, and I want to say it again, that we must make it mandatory that our children, when they want to marry, long before they made the choice, when they're contemplating it, they want to confirm it, they need to go for premarital counseling and also for premarital classes, whether they found someone or not. And the other thing that for me is important, that our schools should really do this in the senior classes, where young people are impressionable and, they go gaga when they see the other person and they say, oh, I'm in love. They do not understand these things. They must understand the dynamics of relationships, inshallah. It will make a big difference.
And to what extent are children actually impressionable? And at what sort of an age do you suggest that this message actually starts to become implemented, or that ideas shared into them? Is it the early teen years, mid-teen years? Where are we looking? Because I know, for example, in many cultures, and especially what I've noticed in South Africa, is that I see a lot of guys and girls that have got married very young. They're like, I'm coming up to my 40s now, and I see that at 36, 37, 38-year-olds, ladies are actually almost grandmothers, or in some cases grandmothers already. And for me, this was a big shock. So when exactly are we teaching these children this whole important lesson of actually, choosing that right sort of response?
I think for me, what is critical is that the whole issue of relationship dynamics should be an ongoing thing, even from the formative years in the primary school. About how do you deal with disagreement without being disagreeable, how you listen with empathy and understanding. We talk about family life, family relationships in that way, without being too specific. And then when you are in the teenage years, I think it's a time when kids are precocious. I mean, they've read about it, they understand these things. Then you can go into a greater detail. And I think it's fundamental where, for example, the people that are conducting these classes must be people who themselves are happy people, who are happily married. One of the things that I often say in my programs, you do not get married to be happy. You are happy and you get married. And that is a fundamental thing. And I think, when you ask many people, they say, if only my wife and I were mature enough, if you only knew if we were given the tools about how do we deal with the situation in which we are almost in a cul-de-sac, she has an entrenched point of view, I have an entrenched point of view, how should you go about discussing it, And I think this is something that is important. So to answer your question, I think we do not look at chronological age, you also look at psychological age. It all depends on the maturity of people, and we have to do this. We have to promote the institution of marriage.
Absolutely. And I think I think there's many overlapping topics leading up to this, because with a lot of people that I'm also speaking to, they are also, sharing this concern that in this day and age, the amount of money that is being spent on marriages and how children are being prepared for the wedding day rather than the marriage. And again, what needs to happen, because a lot of people are averse to that belief that, all that money that is being spent currently on the wedding day should rather be used to feed the poor, or using that money to set up their own personal lifestyle. So what is it that, you can share as nasiha with regards to that point? about changing the expectations of our children with regards to the marriage and the wedding day?
I think this is an important thing. Of course, the wedding day is a momentous day. It's an exciting day, and people are excited, and we get involved in this. But what we fail to realize, long before that wedding day, we have
Yep.
already prepared our children for that wedding in terms of what has been our own relationship. I mean, how many girls or boys would say that if I marry someone, I hope she has the attributes of my mother. Or if I
Yep.
marry someone, I hope he has the attributes of my father. And so the parents themselves, need to be, examples that are worthy of the highest emulation. And, for example, I see Surya Nawab, alhamdulillah, is also watching, my beloved sister. And she would tell you also, this is very, very important. She would say this to you, that the amount of energy it takes to repair a relationship that is gone sour. It is far more important that we expend the energy in helping children, helping young ones how to deal with situations. And of course, a part of premarital counseling is also to engage the prospective in-laws, to get them involved, the kind of support that needs to take place, the kind of involvement and participation. And we need to do that. I mean, the point that you made in your preamble is so true. And that we have taken divorces for granted. It's one of those things. I mean, did you hear, Idris? My daughter is back.
Yeah, I mean, it's a get out clause. They literally know that they're holding the cards. Go and try it out. If it doesn't work, just come back home.
Yeah, correct, yes. And this is the notion some parents tell the children, you know what, listen, you give it your shot. If it doesn't work, our doors are always open. I mean, the point is this, in the earlier days, when mothers and fathers send their daughters, they did not say the door is open, but any child would know the door is open in the sense, but they did not encourage that. I recall in one particular instance, when this lady, she had an issue. Whenever she has an issue, she runs to the brother's place. Her mom and dad were late. May Allah grant all our parents a high status in Jannah. And what he said to her, listen, this is not your home. I want you to sort out your own relationship with your mother-in-law. And that was a tipping point. She realized that the only sanctuary that she can develop, as it were, is in her own home, and she needs to deal with other people in ways that are much more respectful and responsive. And alhamdulillah, that was a turning point.
Yeah, definitely. And again, this Sister Asma is asking a beautiful question here, saying that what can you do with children who come from a broken home, haven't been exposed to any of these, high, lofty characteristics that we are talking about? So what is it that we can do to instill children with positivity and understanding of mutual respect?
Now, this is a very important question. The critical thing is this, that when children, I mean, all of us, it is said, we do not see the world as it is, but as we are. We are products of life experiences. So if you have gone through negativity in your life, you're going to carry the negativity, and it's going to color your lens. It'll taint the way you look at things. It might make you into a pessimist, a person that might be insanely jealous, a person that has a low self-esteem and a low EQ. And what is important, there's a condition that we spoke about, is called post-traumatic stress. And I think it's important that we need to deal with that, so that these young boys and girls do not carry that baggage. Otherwise, they, instead of the vicious circle becoming a virtuous circle, it'll continue to be a vicious circle. In other words, the mistakes of their parents would be replicated in their own life.
Yeah, and definitely so, because I think there was another post that I put up today, because I've been contemplating a lot of these issues regarding marriage. And I put down today that marriage that is built up on guilt, the spouse has got married simply because of not wanting to feel guilty of letting the girl down or letting the family down. A lot of the time there's emotional blackmail that causes a person to go and get married, although he doesn't want to. But in most of those cases, we find that these houses are filled with bitterness, with anger, with frustration, and they never seem to be able to bridge the gap. And someone asked the question again, saying that, is it possible to remedy that? And it would remedy, provided there was actually maturity within the couple. And other than that, I mean, from your experience, what do you find? Where marriages
what
are
happens? Okay, no, I take your point. The thing is this, I mean, when you look at a wholesome human being, what is it that makes a person wholesome? We are fallible and we are going to make mistakes. This is very important. Now, the critical aspect is this, that we as human beings need to understand as parents. For example, you see your child growing up, you can say, listen, Fatima, you know what, Fatima? We love you, we care for you, you have many wonderful qualities, but what we find essentially is the fact that sometimes you can be selfish, sometimes you can be very, very demanding, right? And long before they get married, you need to deal with this. It's so important that you deal with this particular issues. And the point is this, no one is angelic. You find in every marriage, you find different kinds of issues. But it is sad when issues have been a result of how they've been nurtured or brought up, becomes an integral part of their life. And unbeknown to them, they do not realize the mistakes they are making based on that negative experience. And I think we've got to ask ourselves, what is it that makes a happy marriage? What is it that makes a difference in our lives? I mean, for example, Surya Nawab makes a point here. If people spend as much time and effort that goes to preparing for the wedding, the point that you made, rather for preparing young people to be responsible spouses, we may be able to curb the spiraling divorce rate. And I think, this is true. I mean, the thing is, sometimes we do not realize that we've got to consciously and with intentionality talk to our children, give them different kind of scenarios and say, Fatima or Muhammad, or say your mother-in-law does this, how should you respond to her? How should you deal with her? Should you talk to her directly, so on and so forth? In other words, create real life scenarios. And I would even go further and I would annotate, for example, the different reasons for divorces and show what is the effective antidote,
Yeah, and I think this is where a lot of youngsters are missing out, because they're usually kept out of the loop of everything. They're surrounded with cotton wools to an extent where they don't see real life situations. And the only thing they know is violence or whatever else it is that they're watching on TV or the dramas that they're following. And unfortunately, it really begins to detach individuals from the whole concept of reality, what goes on, and also to the point where people have become detached from understanding, the impact upon the feelings of other people. And I think this falls into a very important aspect of a happy marriage, because when two spouses cannot take into account how my actions are making my spouse feel, this is one of the quickest ways of crumbling a marriage.
But that's the point. The point is this, I always emphasize the reciprocal understanding. You got to understand, whilst it is true men and women are different in many ways, besides the obvious ways, you got to understand the unique needs of your spouse. And to ask a simple question, darling, what is it that will make you happy? And the whole issue is this, that if communication becomes an integral part of your life, a friend of mine, Sheikh Dawood Butt from Toronto, he was saying to me that he and his wife have decided that every week they are going to have a conversation and look at the positives of the past week and look at the areas for development. And he says, this is fundamental. Now, the point is this, that all of us are products of life experiences. It does not mean, for example, that if you did something a particular way, that's the only way to do it. People do things differently. People's personalities are different, and you got to accommodate that. I will never forget this one experience. CD, I must mention. Someone sent me a video clip, and it was about a Christian funeral. and I wasn't too sure why it was sent. I said, let me watch it completely. It was a very short 3-minute one, I think it was. And then I realized the value and the lessons it was conveying. What was it all about? It was a funeral where the woman whose husband's body was there, and she's addressing the people who came there, and I think her son and daughter was there. And she starts off by saying that my husband had 2 obnoxious qualities. Can you imagine? You expect only people to wax lyrical and to praise. His 2 obnoxious qualities. The one habit he had, he used to snore, and she mimicked his snoring. And the other that he, I mean, he said he used to emit, foul air from the posterior. She says, you know what? I regarded those as obnoxious habits, but now that he's gone, I regard them as beautiful imperfections, because it was a reminder to me that he was alive and well. It's about really choosing your battles. Ask yourself, what is that he has under his control? We need to do that. And I think it's fundamental. And when you are able to invest in each other, learn from your mistakes, I promise you, it's such a beautiful foundation.
Yeah, and that's it. And before we move on, guys, there's 29 of you watching. Alhamdulillah, welcome. And can I please ask you to share this video, because I know you're benefiting from it, and I'm sure your network of friends and family will also benefit. So please, inshallah, click the share button and then just let it go out. Okay, let's spread this message, because there's a lot of gems being shared here between myself, Zuhair Giraj, founder of Aafiyah Healing, Brother Edris Khamissa, human development consultant, and inshallah, I'm in the UK, Brother Edris in South Africa, alhamdulillah, and together, left and right, mashallah, we cover much of the globe. So, alhamdulillah, moving on, inshallah, one of the important things that has come up as well is this whole concept. Recently I was speaking and counseling a young lady who has been in marriage for 5 months. And I asked her, she goes that once I got married, I found out that my husband was completely opposite of what I had actually met. And I said, how long was the courting phase? She said 1 year. And I said, for 1 year, you knew this person, you spoke to him on the phone, and you met a few times here and there, and the families were involved in the meeting, so it was very halal and overboard. But in that 1 year, she was not able to see any of those vile qualities in him. And so what actually needs to happen in such scenarios and in such meetings to avoid such disasters?
You know what? This is a point. In fact, I would recommend that the most critical questions to be asked should be about your childhood. Very, very critical. In fact, I find that in most cases that I deal with, I know Surya is also watching this, and she can, also make a comment. I found that inevitably it was about how the child was brought up, the experiences they've had. For example, to ask questions like this: did you grow up in a happy home? Yeah. When you become a mother, would you emulate the example of your mother? Yes or no? Or your father? Are there some experiences that you do not want to talk about? Yeah. Were your parents happy? Did they express their love for each other? And so on and so forth. These are fundamental questions. And I promise you, if these questions are asked, if you ask the other individual, you get to know a person better. And in fact, you find that when couples say, for example, oh, I remember when I spoke to her before I got married, she did tell me that she'd been through some trauma. So in that way, what happens? The husband becomes much more empathetic. He begins to understand. He shows far greater sensitivity. And by holding her by the hand, inshallah, he'll be able to harness, as it were, a self-esteem. So that is one series of questions. The other one is, do you like friends? What kind of friends? What would be the role of your friends after we get married? You understand? What do you look for in a friend? Who is your best friend? So these are fundamental questions, because in the end, when these questions are not asked, and when you get married, suddenly you realize you are married to an introvert, a person does not want to be with friends, and he tells you quite clearly, soon after honeymoon, I don't want you to keep in contact with any of your friends. And then you say to yourself, or maybe to him, if I'd known that you're going to do this to me, then I would not have gotten married to you. For example, you get some sisters telling you that my husband or my husband-to-be, before we got married, he was okay that I was studying. He was okay that I was going to pursue a career. And then soon after we got married, he said, listen, I don't want you to go to work. And that is grossly unfair. And the point that has to be made is this, that we have to ask more and more questions these days than we did previously, because in the days gone by, because of extended family and so on and so forth, even if there was an absent father syndrome, we found the children grow up with far greater stability. They're able to engage, they've honed the socializing skills, they're able to deal with disappointment and so on and so forth.
And that's an important point as well. So inshallah, before we move on, guys, if you haven't shared the video already, please share it. The question being, and what we are seeing is that to ask the question to your potential spouse to say that, how was your upbringing? Did you face any trauma of any sort? What I'm finding very troubling in this day and age is that most children are being brought up with an extensive amount of trauma. So I don't think you'll find any 2-3 individuals, in a very small minority who won't have been traumatized at some point. With everything that goes on, where, this whole absent father syndrome that's going on, you see mothers that are struggling financially, there are struggles, there's sibling rivalry going on. And, recently we did one of our talks on this summit with regards to the increased amount of child sexual trauma, where children have been abused in their past, and this is all being swept under the carpet. So where are we literally going to find children or, potential spouses that have not been traumatized? And how do we overcome that?
You know what? The point is this, that there is a big difference. Of course, when you're growing up, all of us would have our moments when we might have been unhappy, perhaps, emotionally torn, whatever it is. But if it became when it became a day-to-day issue, an integral part of your life, when you have been stripped of your dignity, that's another matter altogether.
Yeah.
But an important aspect is this, a critical aspect is this, that sometimes unbeknown to many of us, we do not realize why we do what we do. We do not realize, for example, why is it that I'm always negative, I'm always finding a problem instead of a solution. And I think it's important that people need to understand that. They need to also develop an understanding of the psychology about what is it that shapes attitude and values, and the profound impact, family life has,
Absolutely. And Sister Estella makes a good point, saying that we need to establish premarital counseling that is mandatory within our ummah, like the Catholic faith already does. So how is it that we can get these ulama on board, or the institutions, the Islamic institutions, to actually start implementing this? Where would be a good point, and how would we start, and can we have a model system that can actually be utilized for this purpose?
Alhamdulillah, the very important thing is this, that the ulama are coming on board, and I think many of them on the personal capacity are also offering their services. And
Excellent.
There are many institutions that are doing that, like Islamic Care Line, Helpline, and others that are also doing that. But it is, something that is so fundamental. I recall, for example, when I meet the couples, I ask them many questions. Then I also ask them, I'm sure you have some fear. You have some fear. So what is it? And sometimes they open up. They said, you know what? I'm concerned about my future husband's temperament. I'm very concerned about it. You understand? And they share that. And then when they do get married, the issue of temperament, it becomes a recurring nightmare and is problematic, you know, and these are important things. And I think in the end, you are really going to spend your life with an individual, you know, for the rest of your life. And the institution of marriage goes far beyond your death, as it were. So it's so important, so critical that you make a decision. You know, one of the most beautiful things in a happy marriage is when who you are in front of your spouse, you are the same when they're not around, when you can be your true self. And that's a fundamental thing. When you know, I tell everyone, right, I tell everyone this, that I do not mind if the whole world stops talking to me, except your CD, right? Right? The whole world stops talking to me, right? And but you got a wife that is waiting for you. She loves you. She supports you. That's what you need in the end. What's the use? What's the use that you got, you know, no support from your home, but the whole of humanity is embracing you?
Absolutely. And this is it, isn't it? This is the challenge that most people have. Most celebrities and superstars have this issue, that they are loved by the world, but at home it's hellfire. And this is where we have.
Yeah, and one of the points that Mohiddin makes is that this needs to be spoken about by the ulama in the pre-khutbah talks, you know, to talk about these things, inshallah. Sure. And I'm sure, I know many of them are doing that. And I think what happens is this, that we need to understand, you know, about the human being, the psyche. We need to understand what is it that will make someone happy, and that will make a huge difference. You know?
Yeah, and I think this is where we are coming to, is that our ummah is in a desperate state, that it is yearning for something more. But unfortunately, I think what has happened over time is that our deen has become watered down, and people have just, you know, sort of fallen to the wayside. And a lot of people, subhanallah, they're looking for that extra fulfillment within their being. And I think this is the time where the ulama have a beautiful opening to come and nurture those spirits, you know, from the Islamic spirituality side of fulfilling hearts and minds of our individuals. And inshallah, I think this is something that I do see that ulama are coming on board. They are starting to patch up and bridge their differences. But more importantly is that we need that unification to happen as soon as possible, not just amongst the ulama, but for the sake of spouses, for the sake of the fabric of our society. And this is something that, again, you know, with the work, mashallah, that you do, the work that we are exposed to, is that we need to bring these people back. It's not just about the text and it's not about the book, but more so about how hearts can be brought together.
And, you know, this is it, you know. I think sometimes we forget what it takes to keep two people happy together. And we must not have the pure romantic notions of marriage. Yes, it is an imperative. It must be there. I like it, you know. And these are important things. I love it, right? But the important thing is this: you need to understand that you need how to deal with the situation. And one very, very important attribute that we need to develop in our children is the issue of emotional intelligence. Now, you find more and more psychologists have agreed that one of the most effective antidote to challenges in the marriage is emotional intelligence. Just for the purposes, I'm sure many of those are watching it too, to reinforce what it means. Emotional intelligence basically is about being smart about your emotions, is how you deal with your emotions. And the very important thing is this: when someone has a high EQ, if they are going through an issue with their spouse, they are able to isolate the issue and will not allow that issue to impact on their feelings about the marriage. Now, you find that if you got a low EQ, if you go through one little challenge, you'll tell your wife, you know, I don't know why I married you. I shouldn't have married you. My mother told me I shouldn't have married you. And you find that people with high EQ do not have what you call an emotional meltdown. They do not have all of these things. So it's very, very important. The critical thing is this, that if you are not happy as an individual, if you are not happy before you marry, if you are insecure, then you're going to be insecure for the rest of your life. You are going to misinterpret even the most innocuous and innocent actions of your spouse. And this is critical. With what eyes you look at each other, and this kind of jealousy, this kind of suspicion, this kind of, like being a control freak and misinterpreting things that are supposed to be virtuous. You say perhaps, oh, my husband is smiling at me because I'm sure he did something naughty before he came home, so on and so forth. These are wonderful gifts to give your children. The issue of self-esteem, where they feel good. And self-esteem is basically, recognizing that you are a unique creation of Allah. Therefore, the dua you make, you say, Ya Allah, you made me beautiful outside, also make me beautiful inside. That you are a beautiful being. And you find that lots of parents, 85% of the time, they diminish the children. They say to them, you're stupid, you're silly, you're fit for nothing. And these are things that really impact. That negative talk leads to a negative self-talk. They begin to believe in it. And it's important that, you are happy, as an individual, that you are able to deal with it. You deal with life challenges, with purpose. And, as they say, the bend in the road is not the end in the road. With every heartache, there will be ease,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is where, and recently only I was speaking to a brother who was looking to get married to a sister. They felt very compatible. But one of the traits that he picked up with her was this extreme sense of jealousy, that she was constantly watching him with every move he was doing and how many women's numbers he had in his phone and why and what. And this brother, mashallah, he's known in the community. He does a lot of charity work. He's well known for his profession. But on that point, he knew that if life carried on in that way, that him and his wife wouldn't be able to see eye to eye with each other, that he was constantly on guard that his wife didn't suspect him of doing the wrong thing had the marriage gone ahead. And this is something, again, that just like what you are mentioning about emotional intelligence, is that, there has to be a level of maturity that is required for a marriage to actually work.
And therefore, it's very important that when you are, contemplating a partner, of course, we know what Islam demands from you. The critical issue is asking yourself, okay, socially, is she and I on the same kind of platform? You understand? If you are a gregarious social being, and the wife is not, or vice versa, that is going to put a lot of tension there, right? Number one. The second important thing is critical. Now, even in your social being, in that life, the critical thing, as Nafisa Ismail reminds us, is that the misuse of social media leads to many challenges in modern day marriage. It's so true. We need to speak about that. I mean, you know how it happens? You might send a message of Juma Mubarak in a platonic way, and she might send it back to you. Next week, you send next week. No, but I'm just saying, the next week you send maybe with a thumbs up, right? She sent 2 thumbs up, and then with a heart, and it goes on. Because what happens behind the social media, you can adopt any particular persona you want. And social media is so consuming, and it really is having a profound, profound impact on marital relationships.
Absolutely. And this is it. And with our role, we find that constantly we are getting messages from around the world with constant this problem, that problem, that problem, and it's consumed us. Okay, especially in our positions, I'm sure with yourself as well. I can see you're still reading something that's going on there as well. So it's absolutely just got everyone in grips, with right down to the children. And so again, what is it that we need to do now in order to start affecting change, or at least for the people that are watching us, what advice can we give them with regards to understanding and especially maintaining that marriage at that more mature level?
I would recommend three fundamental things, right? Number one is this: I think you and your spouse need to develop what I call a routine, a weekly routine.
Yeah.
In that way, what happens? You have you have a relationship that is functional. It's something that is critical. You're not like two parallel trains passing each other every day.
Yeah.
So you, in other words, the wife and you have certain expectations. Whilst they say a family that eats together, plays together, and prays together stays together. And then
Yeah.
each day has some unique aspect about it. And that is critical. That's one aspect. Developing a meaningful routine, even it could include visiting the sick, doing acts of goodness together,
Yeah.
volunteering, and keeping in touch with family, so on and so forth. There's one.
Yeah.
The second aspect that which is also very critical is to say, what are the core values that you and I subscribe to?
Yeah.
And among the core values could be that, if one person is angry, the other person must be quiet. You don't aid and abet that. The other core value is this, that when someone speaks, let us be present and listen to the person with our heart.
Yeah.
Thirdly, whenever we get guests, we will make sure that we would look after our guests. I mean, you decide on what is unique to you. That's the issue of values. The third thing, which is fundamental, is I say you and your spouse must have goals. You must
Yeah.
have goals. For example, collective goals. This is very important. What are our collective goals? Number one. Then you have personal goals. The thing is, we are rounded human beings. We are people that have morals. We are emotional, affective, cognitive beings. And we help each other to grow. For example, nothing can be of greater support than to support your particular spouse for our own endeavors and ambitions. And in that way, it makes a huge, huge difference. And
Yeah.
it's something we need to invest on. But what has happened today, you
So just give
find
us
that when people go...
Give us a summary. It was collective goals, personal goals, and the third one?
And no, collective goals,
Yeah.
right? Then your personal goals,
Yeah.
then you have values, and then you
Okay.
have a routine. Now, these are fundamental things. Once you start doing that, then you are really impacting on each other's life,
Yeah. So I've just put that up for our viewers, inshallah, that for them that missed it, they can have that. This is what we need, inshallah. Collective
And also,
goals, and routine. G.
they're also very critical, is that, you find that lots of people, especially our sisters, after some years in marriage, and they complain, they say, you know what, I'm bored. When they met each other, they were on the same plane, right? Plane. Plain and maybe plane. If it's plane, then you say,
might have
then you say
higher
love
level.
is in the air. Love,
Yeah, and
love is in the air. Yeah. So anyway, and they were in the same plane. And what happens, you find, as an example, that the sister said, I've outgrown my man. I don't find him stimulating enough. He doesn't read books. He doesn't listen to lectures. He's not interested. And so, it is important that we understand that. I mean, a question is asked, why is routine so important? Routine is critical. A routine gives you purpose. I tell people this, that if you want to change your life, change your routine. Look at your routine. And once you do that, and look at an agreed routine, in that way, they are a reciprocal understanding and expectation.
Yeah. And it also takes into account each other's feelings. Like my wife says, we need to eat early. That becomes a routine. Eating too late is going to be difficult on us and blah, blah, blah. So whenever there's a routine, it like you said, it changes your whole lifestyle, but also it takes into account each other's feelings and mutual respect ultimately.
Absolutely. And I think the bottom line is this, that you got to ask ourselves what legacy you want to leave behind. How would you like your spouse to remember you? You cannot say, yes, I want my wife to remember me as a loving, caring, darling, shishibabulina, the man, and so on and so forth. And yet you find that in terms of your relationship with her, you are abrasive, you are rude and vulgar. And this is so important, because at home no one is there except Allah is there with you. So it's very important that as individuals, we need to grow, we need to stimulate, and to maintain the excitement in the marriage. You know, that is fundamental.
That's the next question. The next question is that in this day and age, people are losing that oomph in their marriage. Okay, so how do you rekindle that love, that excitement, that falling in love again?
Yes, I think what's important is this, that you need to understand what is the unique nature of your spouse. What is it that tickles her, for example? What is it that excites her? What it is stimulates her? You know, we need to discuss these issues, right? And in different ways. And once you understand that, you know, where you find your partner feels free to discuss issues with you, and it's important. I mean, today you find that lots of our sisters and sometimes brothers also, we don't appear to be partisan, as it were, and they complain, you know what, I feel so stifled at home. When my husband is around, I walk on eggshells. Yeah. You find that there's laughter in our home. Suddenly we hear the car, we know our husband is there. Suddenly we find that everyone is very, very quiet. Everyone, there is stealth there. The kids suddenly go off to sleep. They don't want to be there because, you know, this is the harsh dictator that is walking in, you know. Yet the same individual outside is described as caring and compassionate.
Absolutely. And this is a problem that we see as well in the same thing, that, you know, this person is the same person who is in the mosque 5 times a day. His beard, mashallah, is so long he's tripping over it. His imamah, it can't, you know, be balanced on his head. But the same thing, that the moment he walks into his own home, then subhanallah, where is the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ gone? And really, from the garbs, we need to bring out that wholeheartedness, that the sunnah should, you know, be exemplified from within. And not just within your heart, but from within your home, so that when you carry it outside, the impact upon our communities and those around us, they also have that impact upon their heart. But unfortunately, empty words are falling upon deaf ears. And so we are not seeing that change in that in the way that we want for our society to grow, unfortunately.
No, absolutely. I mean, you know, like one of the things is that the point that is made, Sidi, I don't ask you how you met your spouse, how your eyes were twinkling and whatnot. And
twinkle, subhanallah. You see, you're taking me back. This is not the time.
Yeah, and I hope you don't have amnesia. It's about rekindling that passion, because you can get so caught up with the mundane life. You can get so caught up every day, and we come home, we are preoccupied, and we do not listen patiently. And when the wife speaks to you, you wanted to finish what she's saying, and you interrupt as she's speaking. And those things that need to change. And you find that, you know, I really believe in this. If you come home and you are a loving spouse, I promise you, you'll find barakah in your life. If you create joy and happiness in your home, Allah will create joy and happiness for you wherever you go. And this is something, and our Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, alhamdulillah, was the most eloquent, beautiful example. He was so demonstrative about his love. He was so romantic. He helped with the household chores. His engagement with each of his spouses, what they say about him, the names, the metaphors, the secret code, for example, he had with Bibi Aisha, you know, and these things that we have somehow lost it. You know, we become so mechanistic, as it were, you know.
We become too pious to call names and to be loving.
That's true. You know, we allowed a culture to overtake us. You know, we say, I mean, I've been to some countries where they say it's completely taboo for my husband to be demonstrative about his love to me. It's taboo. You know, I am just a passive recipient here.
Yeah, and this is what we need to break. And I think this generation needs to really wake up and to show that love to their children, to understand that to hold their hands or to hug, give a little peck, mashallah, these are signs of love, and not only to the spouse but then on to the children as well, so that they get brought up in this whole aspect of showing love, receiving love, and then knowing how to give love again.
Now that's critical, because Sidi, the point that is made, that is one thing to say that I love my wife, right? I love my wife. But if the wife has not felt your love, then you have not loved your wife.
No.
This is important. The feelings, you know what I always say, is better to give a person a bouquet than to leave a wreath. Whilst a person is alive, say those things you ought to have said. Say it every day. No one gets tired of it. To tell your darling wife, my baby, how's it, doll? How's it? I like it. And this is something we don't do. And in fact, I'm happy to see you smiling there, because we have lost our sense of humor. Our Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam also had a sense of humor. We have lost it. We need to create that laughter, that happiness, that joy. The wife must say, hey, my hubby is back in town. He says, hey, you got a smile on your tongue. He says, my hubby is back in town.
And this is it. We've become a constipated ummah, isn't it?
That's very true.
Idris, have you watched that movie Constipated?
Hey?
Have you watched the movie Constipated?
No.
The movie. It hasn't come out yet.
Okay. I see the pun there, right? Lucky I'm bright,
Yeah, use it there. Yeah, write it. Yeah. So if you always ask them about that movie, just be sure it hasn't come out. And this is why we need to loosen up. We need to let go.
Yeah, you know what? Okay.
Yeah.
You see, the question is this. It's very important, right? How can we really create a change? What steps must take place for those that are contemplating marriage, right? Next one, those that are married. And what about parents? They've got kids. What should they do at a deeper level to create really fundamental change, so that their sons and daughters grow up, right? Grow up, when they get married, they are able to look at the wife with love, able to see the changes in tone, the nuances, able to respond, able to diffuse a situation. These are fundamental things. The challenges in this stressful modernity, right? Often what it does not, for example, afford an opportunity to people who are not emotionally ready for marriage to really play the role they ought to play.
And I think the parents need to take that responsibility on their behalf. But a lot of the times, the parents are pushing the child into the marriage, hoping that the marriage will solve all their problems. Okay, and this is just extremely immature and unfortunate on behalf of the whole system. And then the families are affected, the near ones, the far ones, and everyone else that's associated with it. So yeah, let's carry on. What are the changes? What do we need to do to shift ourselves up to the next vibration?
I think, the important thing is this. You got to ask yourself, how can parents prepare the children for marriage? What can they do? What attributes should they hone and develop in their children, right? The idea is children need to be able to be generous of heart, to see another point of view. The important thing is this, that when children grow up at home through instant gratification, they would tend to expect that in marriage. And marital life is not like that. No. What is important is this, that they need to understand how to show an understanding, to show compassion, how to communicate, when to communicate, what they should talk about, so on and so forth. The other important aspect, I believe, is very, very critical. When your own parents have a wonderful relationship with their own respective in-laws, without them lecturing to you, they are teaching you how to go about doing it, showing you that I may not agree with my mother-in-law, but it does not mean I need to fight with her. I can deal with that. And this is important. And also, you know, if your relationship with your extended family is not a positive one, then you would not expect the families themselves to be positive towards you. So the long and short of it all is this. I think from the very, very basis, we must plant the seeds of hope in children, teaching them about relationships, you know, explaining to them in a beautiful way, talking about Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and speaking about the institution of marriage, you know.
Yeah. And I think this is it. And I think what it boils back down to is that rather than looking to point fingers at why things are going wrong, we need to take the onus on ourselves and let the change begin from within so that we can bring up our children in that outset. Because you see, just because you're not a child anymore or you don't have a child or your children are grown up, that doesn't take that responsibility away from you, because now you are in the role of an in-law, or you are in the role of a grandparent, and still that knowledge can be imparted. But I think it requires maturity, it requires personal growth, it requires a person, you know, if they need their own healing, that they've suffered from traumas, to let go of their own issues before they can actually impart certain knowledge to their children or their grandchildren. And I think it works
No,
both
absolutely.
ways. Come back to the same thing. Work on yourself.
No, absolutely. And you know what? We need to be positive. We need to be forgiving. Very, very important to be forgiving. We are human. We are fallible. We are going to make mistakes. Let us not, at the slightest provocation, say, my marriage is over. And many people will regret it. I mean, the thing is, one of the things that I'll not forget, I came across a survey, and they asked these ladies who were married now for 10, 15 years, and they asked them, why did you marry your husband? And each one of them gave the reason. And they all said, now that we are married, we realize that the reason why we married them has no bearing for our marriage. So that's important. The whole idea, when you marry someone because of you're being superficial, oh, she's the most beautiful girl in the world, you know, he's the most charming, handsome man. You know what I'm saying to you? And that's your overriding factor, and everything else is unimportant. Then, my friend, you're going to be prepared for the consequences. And this is something that we need to understand.
Yeah, and that's what's happening. So ultimately, mashallah, I think it's been a fruitful discussion, alhamdulillah, and we're getting there. So let's, inshallah, bring this to a close with some closing words. And then what's going to happen hereafter, inshallah, is that we will have a deeper discussion on this, on a specific topic as well, inshallah, where we will share, depending on the questions that come through from our audiences. Guys, if you still haven't shared, please share this video. Let it go out, let it go viral, inshallah. Let people learn, let people be inspired and motivated and understand that change lies within us. The only person we can change is ourselves. You know, I get people coming for marriage counseling crying, saying, oh, he hasn't changed. I said, how long have you been married? 20 years. Well, if he hasn't changed in 20 years, what is the chance that he's going to change tomorrow? You know, you have to move on with yourself. Focus upon yourself. Learn to change yourself. Learn to change your attitude. Learn to shift yourself to a higher level, that your life should not be on hold because your spouse is not walking alongside you. There are times that, yes, a marriage can work, but at the end of the day, you are not dependent and you are not completely, you know, your life does not have to stop because of that. But once change begins to you know, come up from within yourself, when your vibration changes, the other person will begin to shift as well, inshallah. And again, with your own shift and your own vibration changing, increases the level of maturity by which you can actually change the response towards your spouses as well. And alhamdulillah, we see a lot of change happening in that sense. So inshallah, that's my closing words, that the change has to begin within from us, and then from that, inshallah, the surrounding will change. If your marriage still doesn't work, then seek mediation. If mediation isn't working, seek separation. If that isn't working, then there is always that option of, unfortunately, a divorce that Islamically is also allowed. But don't live your life and waste your life and become an emotional wreck, losing yourself, losing your iman, losing your dignity, and in the process, causing trauma to your children and families, unfortunately.
Okay, my closing words is I want to reinforce what you have said. But I think an important thing is this, that when you are nurturing children, develop in them, the capacity to be expressive about their feelings, give them the capacity to articulate what they feel, develop in the capacity for them to be compassionate, develop in them a deep, deep love for Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And I think, you know what, if we do some of the fundamentals correctly, and if children have a realistic expectations of their spouse, and if they are prepared to work together, inshallah, I have no doubt that their home will be a sanctuary, a place that is transformed, a place in which you want to be there, inshallah. So, Sidi, Jazakumullah, you take care, my beloved brother. I like it.
We'll see you soon in May, inshallah. Well,
Inshallah.
When is April? April you're coming, isn't it?
April.
Yeah, I'll see you there, inshallah. We'll have some fun here, inshallah.
Inshallah. Take care, my brother. Assalamu alaikum.
Post the video, don't delete it, okay? Press post when you finish the video. Jazakallah khair.